Welcome back, guys. This is Tucker. Let's talk weather. The tropics are quieting down, but there are still two areas you really need to keep an eye on this week. And some people are calling it the year of the flood. Here's why that may ring true for another week. Well, we finally made it through Hurricane Aaron, and the tropics are a bit quieter now. At least that's what you may think. We're going to start here with Fernand. We're going to get to this in a minute, but that's what's spinning beside me, our most recent tropical storm in the Atlantic. But I also believe there are a few weather threats that aren't getting enough attention right now, and we can already see some changes coming into play just looking at our satellite. Like this guy here. You see that front sweeping in, the dry air coming in behind it? That's where you're not seeing the clouds. Really cool there, huh? And also the storms popping up in the Mountain West. Well, both of these are going to have impacts on our weather this week, so let's jump into it and get you prepared. Let's get right to it. We got Fernand. I also don't really know what kind of a name that is. I keep wanting to say Fernando or Ferdinand, but Fernand? Sorry if your name is Fernand. Regardless, we have our storm, which is a tropical storm in the mid-Atlantic. We'll get to that in a second. We also got this guy out here. Low chance of developing in the next 7 days. But here's the thing. If it does develop, it's something we really need to watch. So that's why we're going to take a look at that in just a second. But here's a look at Fernand first. Forecast to be a tropical storm. It's going to stay to the east of Bermuda here. It's going to be a fish storm. So not much to say there. If anyone's trying to hype this thing up, I don't know what they could say. It's not doing anything to us. Now, if you watched my last video, we were talking about the potential for a storm, at least a window for a storm to impact the U.S. late in August or early September. All thanks to this high pressure system out here. And what this guy's doing is it's forcing storms around it to go south. But once they do get around, they have a window of opportunity to move closer to the U.S. Now, we are seeing Fernand right here. That's that cluster of red spots. Basically gives you a range of outcomes for where these storm systems will be positioned. This guy's going to miss to the north, of course. Here's the remnant of Aaron fading out as it goes deeper into the Atlantic. And then we got our guy right here that we were just talking about. So let's focus in on that. Again, each of these red numbers indicating a possible outcome for the system. And I'm moving this forward into the start of the upcoming week, Monday, Tuesday. What just happened? Look at that. You see it? Not so many numbers. That means that a lot of our weather guidance is suggesting that this isn't even going to hold together. I will say I do believe it will right now because the conditions, they're not too harsh for a system to at least survive as it gets into warmer waters farther west. So here we are. This is an important period of time because if this system does hold together, look what happens as it moves farther west and especially as it gets into warmer waters. You have some potential here for a system to come out of this and move into the Gulf. Now, at this time, it's not the highest probability storm because it still needs to hold together, but I believe there's a better chance than being modeled. And if it does, we see that there is a decent chance beyond that it moves into a more favorable area, develops into a real storm, and may threaten the Gulf. And this threat would come in the very beginning of September, the first 3 days perhaps, as it meanders into those warmer waters, continues developing, and approaches land. Doesn't mean it's going to be a hurricane, but it is something that I believe we really need to keep an eye on, and I think a lot of people might be sleeping on it right now. Otherwise, just looking at the Atlantic as a whole, we still have this big high-pressure system out a bit farther west. That is going to keep the door open for storms to move towards the U.S., but as a whole, we're not seeing significant activity as we get into September, but we will need to keep an eye, of course, on a couple more waves that are definitely going to form at some time in the next few weeks. By the way, guys, if you like these videos, please subscribe, ask your questions in the comments, and let me know where you're watching from. I just love to hear where people are tuning in from and maybe give you a personal forecast if you need one. Now, we've been talking so much about the tropics, I feel like we've kind of ignored maybe a little bit the mainland, but this week it's important to keep tabs on it because I'm looking at the potential for some more flooding. And as I refresh our data and move this forward, you're going to notice a couple things as we begin the week. By the way, this is Sunday, Monday we're looking at. And on Monday, remember that cold front we were talking about? That's it, marked by some of the storms out here as it moves into the East Coast. And as that occurs, some heavy rain out there is possible and eventually more cooling and drying. Also, you're noticing some rain out here in the central U.S. That's going to be an important thing to watch, especially over the mountains, because as I move this through Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, those areas of rain don't change much. In fact, look at the mountains here. That's a lot of rain this week. You're seeing storms pop up all over the place in the afternoons. And it's not just going to be on Tuesday, but rather Wednesday and Thursday. You're just seeing the same old areas picking up rain. A couple of these systems sweeping off the Rockies, bringing rain to the central U.S. The mountains themselves producing a ton of rain. Meanwhile, out east, well, you got high pressure here, and that's going to keep things generally pretty dry across the eastern portion of the United States. But we do have some flooding concerns to talk about, as much of the central U.S., even parts of the southeast, we just see a lot of rain continuing to fall while the eastern half of the country remains dry. So where does that leave us with flooding potential? Well, we can take a look here at the excessive rainfall outlook. And what you're seeing is right off the Rockies into Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, we got this slight risk for flooding, flash flooding that would be. But it's not just one day. We move this into our Monday, and we have that round moving a bit farther to the east. We have more rain potentially creating flooding over the Rockies. Move it into Tuesday and Wednesday, and it's many of these same areas facing potential flood risks. And I believe on Thursday, too, we're going to see another area out here, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see upgraded areas in here. Now, the mountains can flood more easily because of the topography, and that is taken account into this forecast. But nonetheless, it is something that we will need to keep an eye on, especially after seeing some of the floods that have already occurred this year. Now, we've covered some of the big stuff in the forecast, but why don't I give you a look at the big picture? Just get you ready for the next 2 weeks here. And what we're looking at are the air masses, and here's the interesting thing. You'll notice these blue colors generally indicating cooler than average air, which have been present across much of the Northeast already this month. Well, they're sort of locking in here, and you can see much of the eastern U.S. is going to stay cooler than average as we head through the remainder of August and into the start of September. We also have some warmer than average weather across the Rockies, and because we have this ridge in place, it's part of the reason we have the daily thunderstorms. When you actually have a very warm air mass over the mountains, you typically create those storms more easily. And moving this into and through the first week of September, well, at least through the end of August and into the first week of September, you can see these cooler than average temperatures likely continue without really any stoppage here. The warmer than average weather stays out farther west. We don't see a big break in that pattern as a whole. Now, the one thing that will be a little different than what we would typically see is that usually when you have a ridge, it's drier, but in the mountains, because of the rain, that summer pattern, it's actually going to be a bit wetter. Meanwhile, where you typically do see a little more rain, where you have those cooler than average air masses, it's actually going to be drier out east. So a little opposite what we would typically see here. But more or less, this means really comfortable fall conditions. I'm a summer guy, though. That makes me sad. I'm out here in Boston. But that's what we're going to see in the eastern U.S. And on the other hand, definitely some rain and potential flooding across the western U.S., although the west coast itself sort of treated separately here, looking pretty nice too, where the weather should be actually very pleasant for this time of year. Very, very normal, so to speak. And with that, we'll wrap things up. I feel like it's kind of a quiet week as a whole. So take advantage of the nice weather you got. And in the meantime, like I said, if you have any questions, drop them in the comments. And we'll do the same old thing. I'll be back here on Monday with an update. Be sure to check back for the latest.